Villains. Villains are the things that make or sometimes break a superhero. They are evil for the most part. And the weird thing is, even though we know they are evil, we love them. We love villains. I mean, like, I love villains, you love villains, we all love the villains. Even though they're doing despicable evil acts, for some reason, we love them for the more evil they do. It is weird, because in real life, we do not love evil things. It is not right. But in comics, it's just darn cool. So let me take a look at my top 10 favorite villains. I have my top 10 Batman villains, Superman villains, and Spider-Man villains already said. So let's see, what are my top 10 villains overall? Let's find out. Sit back, relax. Here we go with my top 10 comic book villains.
You're playing with the big boys now.
Number 10.
Play with the big boys now. Oh, that's pretty.
Superman Prime. Superman Prime, it's a weird villain because, for one thing, he actually doesn't even have a hero to fight. I mean, he fights everyone. Green Lantern, Superman. I mean, the guy quite literally fights everyone. He's not a villain against a hero, he's a villain against heroes. And I really like Superman Prime. I sometimes call him Superboy Prime because that's who he was when he starts out, but he calls himself Superman Prime now. So basically the story of Superman Prime was, he's basically the Superman from another universe, but his universe was basically ours. I mean, he read Superman comic books, he read Green Lantern comic books. That's who he was. He was one of the comic book fans that accidentally went a little wacko. And he has, his whole purpose is, he wants to be the only hero on Earth. So no one will know the horrible things he's done. But the way he approaches things, and he's just a really cool villain. I mean, sure, sometimes it looks like a total wimp, and then he just rips the guy's arms off. I also like how he doesn't like flashes. He has like a flash phobia sort of thing, where he really doesn't like the flashes, even though but I don't know, I just really like him. I love his uniform in the Sinestro Corps. It's just so darn cool. Not too crazy when he's just wearing the bear shirt, but it's alright. He is a great villain. Superman Prime. It's like the Man of Steel, only crazy.
You're playing with the big boys now.
Number 9.
Play with the big boys now. Oh, that's pretty.
Merlin. Merlin is an assassin and a Green Arrow villain, which is really easy to see since he also uses a bow and arrow. I first read about him in Identity Crisis, and he kind of looked a little lame to me, just a guy with a bow and arrow. Whoopie-doo. But I read a little bit of Green Arrow, and I saw that he was a much more serious villain, and pretty interesting, actually. I find him rather cool. Sure, he kind of looks a little weird with that beard and the arrows, but hey, it makes a perfect villain for Oliver Queen. Also, he has one of my most favorite moments in comics. If you want to see that, see my favorite comic moments. I have a video on that, I think. Anyway, so Merlin, just a great villain. I want to know more about him. It's very cool, and he's on my list. Being lethal, cool, and a little bit evil, he's a perfect villain for the Green Arrow. Merlin.
You're playing with the big boys now.
Number 8.
Play with the big boys now. Oh, that's pretty.
Doc Ock. Now, would you believe it that I don't have any Spider-Man issues with Doc Ock in it, and yet he's like one of my favorite villains? Like, we did have a few, but my sister has them. And she moved out, so stupid. But anyway, Doc Ock, he's Spider-Man's ultimate villain, I think. I mean, it's just such a simple concept. A guy with 4 arms made out of metal. He's a doctor. Oh, he has 8 limbs and all. Doc Ock. That's it. Dr. Octopus is just such a great Spider-Man villain. I just like him because, I don't know, for one, he kind of comes across to me as a guy who doesn't really think that he's doing anything wrong. Sometimes. I mean, that he just feels like sometimes he's like, oh, he wants to take over the world or whatever, but I don't know. Sometimes he just feels like he's not doing anything wrong. He's doing justice to his own self, and Spider-Man just keeps on getting in his way. So, but of course, you know, that's how villains start, and then later on they're like, okay, I'm evil. I don't give a crap. I'm just gonna do whatever the heck I want. I mean, what's not to like about Doc Ock? He is like, imagine if your science school teacher went evil and sprouted and got 4 mechanical limbs welded onto him. Your science teacher could be Doc Ock. Is he overweight? That's another thing that makes, like, all villains, for the most part, are like thin, buff guys. Doc Ock is a little bit chubby. Well, depending on which comic you read, he could be really, really chubby. I mean, but he's rarely ever been thin. But, and let's not forget his haircut. Sometimes can be a little bit, whoa, it's weird. But hey, he's cool, and he's Doc Ock. So, yeah. Moving on to the next one.
You're playing with the big boys now.
Number 7.
Play with the big boys now. Oh, that's pretty.
Captain Cold. If you've seen some of my other stuff, you know that I really like Captain Cold. He's just an amazing villain. I don't know. I haven't. Okay, I didn't really know that much about Captain Cold until I read some Rogue's Revenge by Jeff Johns, and I really liked Captain Cold. I mean, like, before he just looked, oh my gosh, he's just a guy in a darn, he has a hood and those 3D goggles, what the heck. And then I read it, I'm like, oh man, he's just a cool character. Because you know what he feels like? He feels like if, like, a trucker got ice gun. I mean, honestly, he does. He feels like, oh, like, there are times where he's like, oh man, I need a beer. I mean, and he feels like, he has that feel to him, but he has a feel where, you know, he's a villain, but you don't really consider him as evil, because usually he, as he says, he only kills when it's kill or be killed. So, you know, you don't really think of him as an evil person, just a villain. And, you know, that's interesting for a villain. Usually you want to think of him as the most evil thing on earth, but no. The Flash's top villain, you don't really consider him that evil. It just says he's such a great character, and honestly, I just really like Captain Cold. There's nothing not to like. Next on my list.
You're playing with the big boys now.
Number 6.
Play with the big boys now. Oh, that's pretty. Every spell and gesture tells you what's best. You're playing with the big boys now.
Magneto. The ultimate villain for the X-Men. Magneto. Master of magnetism. Magneto is kind of a unique character, because honestly, in his mind, he really thinks he's doing the right thing. He really thinks humanity is all evil, and the only way to ensure the mutants to survive and also made their superiors. Like, he's a guy, and it's so weird because him and Professor Xavier are best friends.